world that are like, hey, we want to come down and just help you. And I'm going to give you money. I'm going to go down there and give you and teach you how to transact with money. Like, no one's ever been fucking pissed at somebody for like getting help. You know, like I've never met anyone be like, "Hey, Alan, fuck you. Why'd you help me?" You know, there might be
Alan, are you
hesitant.
That,
going?
Well,
that's it,
Are you
man.
going, Alan?
maybe
I
Alan, are
Alan,
you
I
going?
I am
Alan,
going.
are you going?
I got a I'm planning a trip here for later this September.
maybe
Alan,
Julio or Dan could weigh in on what would be the reaction to a whole bunch of gringos coming down.
no, no,
Is
no,
that
no. Listen,
I'm Mexican, so I can play. I don't think gringo's acceptable for me, but
listen, guys. This is the reality here. All right, we are not abrasive to people visiting because we know that you guys are coming to, like Alan said, to consume, to have you guys have liquidity that people don't have, and that's I think the main point about Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador. You would normally never consider going down there. I personally live 4 hour drive away from center of El Salvador, and I live on a road called Road to El Salvador, and I have not considered going there just because I don't have any reason to go, but now we should all go. I mean, that's the whole idea. So yeah, I agree with you, Alan. We should all go and have like a commission of actual Bitcoiners. You know what I mean? Just regular people who have an interest in teaching other people. And I think I found a good entering a way to enter their hearts, and that is one on one. That's just, I mean, you can give someone $1 and say here's $1, or you can go through half an hour class and teach them how to do it. It's a game changer. All right, it's a game changer. You could open up the book with anyone and say, hey, have you heard about Bitcoin? It's like, hey, do you have a minute to talk about Jesus, kind of thing? You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing, and you're actually giving them economic freedom. And by the time you're done talking to them, they are fully awakened by the possibility of they having that economic power in their hands. All right. The guy that I left with yesterday, I don't know if you guys saw the picture, two guys. One guy had to go deliver a burger. The other guy stayed with me for another half an hour. And by the time him and I were done talking, he's like, dude, I'm going to go make burgers from my house and sell them in Bitcoin. I said, do it. Do it. You can make the money now. You don't need a bank. You don't need cash. You don't need a license, nothing. And he was like, "Oh my god, bro, I can't believe you showed me this. Who are you?" It's a game changer, guys. One on one.
speaking of one-on-one, I think most of you know this, but maybe some people in the audience don't. Um, One of our regulars, um, we call him Tao, but it's like Dao De Cheng 2 is his Twitter handle. He's been operating spaces for the sole purpose of giving away sats. He's given away 1,500 sats per person today to demonstrate how easy it is to use the Lightning Network and get them on it, which is brilliant. He's been doing it for like a couple of weeks and to over 100 people so far. And another one of our regulars sent him 150,000 sats to give away. So he's not going to run out of money. You know, people are going to keep supporting that, and it's there's nothing like handing out money and giving a demonstration. You know, and that's I think what Bukele also had in mind with the $30 that he's giving all adults in his country in Bitcoin, and in El Salvador, $30 for many people is a lot of money.
Yeah,
It's like
that's the way to do it.
180,
I've been
$180
giving
million
out.
dollars.
Yeah, is it? I've been giving out just as an idea, just $1, which is 3,000 sats, to anyone that will listen to me, and it has 100% worked. I mean, every single time. And whenever somebody comes and gives me a service, like we went out for cake at a coffee shop yesterday, and I gave a lady 20,000 satoshis. It was like she had some power in her hands. Like, yeah, 1,500 satoshis is a lot, considering it would be worth more. But if we were able to give someone a sizable amount, like $5, so they could go buy something, and then use that money to say, "Look, I'll buy this from you. From what I learned today," I think that would be more transformative than just onboarding people. Yeah, getting them off zero is critical, but I'm aiming for a little bit higher, like $5, so that they can say, "Look, I'll buy this fruit from you," and then they're like, "Holy shit, I actually bought something with the money that this guy gave me," instead of them forgetting about it. Because I have found that people will set it aside, or they have too many apps, and they'll just like, they'll set it aside and not think about it. But if you see that $5 become 10 in maybe a few weeks, hopefully in a few months, they're going to be like, "Man, I have some purchasing power that I can actually use." And it is a lot of money to give away, I understand, but I don't know. I don't care.
And
Before,
if you shouldn't impoverish yourself. There are people on here who will send you donations to do that. And the great thing about blockchain is people can verify that you're handing it out in small increments and not just spending it on a fancy dinner. So don't be afraid to ask people for donations.
Well, you know what? I'll say something crazy. Someone offered me 3 Bitcoin, okay, for Bitcoin school. And I don't know how to accept that. Okay. I don't know why anyone would offer that yet, because I have not offered any value for Bitcoin school. I'm building the systems to educate people, but there's no reason why I should accept that yet. And I understand that you want to verify it, but I don't have enough systems to actually do it at scale. So it would just be sitting there. You know what I mean? It would just be a waste of resources to actually just sit there. And for what? I would rather people help me with, evangelizing, if that's a lame word, but there's other ways we can help other than just donating money. I don't necessarily need the donations yet. I mean, if we were going to found a school in El Salvador, a physical location with rent and, painting, and we hired people and paid them in Bitcoin, I would be like, yes, let's do it. But I'm not there yet, I think. But I do appreciate that the sentiment of altruism that is extreme in this community, I think.
You know what I think would have been amazing for President Bukele to have done live on the a presentation that he did showing how Lightning Network works using the Archivo app, was to do a live demonstration that for those that were here earlier in another space group that Log was mentioning about this individual called Tao. He literally was sending sats from San Francisco to everybody from different parts of the world. I'm sat here in Liverpool, and literally while speaking to me, he's sending 1,500 sats. It literally, I don't even think it took a second. As he just said, sent, my phone buzzed and I said, I received. If he did that on the spot during his presentation, explaining how Lightning Network works with his citizens, the rate, I believe, at least in my own thinking here, the rate of adoption would have gone like through the roof straight away because people could see the benefits. He did a great job if you just observe the presentation he did. I think I'd never seen that such an eloquent presentation by a president explaining about how Bitcoin works. I think every country should do that, but they should follow up with a presentation. And what's beautiful about that, about Bukele, was that he clearly said you don't actually need to use the government's wallet. You can use any wallet, and it's fine. I think if that message goes out across the board the same way, the trust element will not be needed, because while I understand Latin America has a history where trust is often misused and abused, giving people an option to go and use whatever app they want to use for Lightning just empowers them more to say, yes, the government is giving you the money, to show them that they can actually use it instantaneously, and how remittances can actually be close to 100% in their own pocket from their family in America or wherever they are in the world instantaneously as well. It's going to be phenomenal. I think that's the only trick that was missed there, to be honest. Other than that, all the issues that we're discussing about trust, I agree, it's a big thing, but can be worked around. The challenge, in my own head, I'm thinking, if you don't declare Bitcoin as money and you say it's crypto, it's going to be a big mess down the line, and adoption will be an issue. That's the way I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it from a very simplistic point of view.
Yeah, there's like we've been saying, there's definitely a lot of education that needs to happen. Bukele had a great interview with Peter McCormack that came out recently. Regardless how you feel about Peter, I highly recommend you go listen to it. But he seems like he's educated himself quite a bit, and he's aware that people are going to be pushing back. But I think his rationale behind it is like, look, like we don't even have our own currency as it stands right now. Like we opted for the US dollar 20 years ago. And he was like, hasn't worked out all that great in our favor. And now he's like, we're gonna opt for another policy that's further out of our hands. You know, no one controls it, and he's. I mean, most of you guys were in there that the night he came into the Twitter Spaces and announced just like the bill being passed and everything. I mean, I truly want to believe that those guys believe that they're looking out for the future of their people. I mean, you hear them talk about how everyone's all doom and gloom and like money, being able to fix the money. I mean, like he full on believes fix the money, fix the world.
I like to look at. I like the long plays, right? So I think once people get used to Bitcoin, he's gonna phase out the dollar.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's how you have to do it though, without like completely destroying whatever economy you have existing right now, especially since the world operates on the dollar. I mean, you have to have both to segue into another. It'd be like taking heroin away from an addict. They're going to go jump off a cliff.
Julio, did you say you think Bukele is going to phase out the dollar?
Yeah, I think when people get used to Bitcoin and see that it's not, well, when it's stable or when it's used as a medium of exchange, he's definitely gonna phase out the dollar.
Yeah, to your point.
I
I
agree with Julio, but it's gonna be time. Like it's not gonna be like next week or next month. It's gonna be like a process of years. Is that what you're referring to? Like it's not gonna be super fast, right?
think
Well, here's the
it's got to
thing.
be like a decade, because imports and exports are still priced in dollars, and they can't have that kind of volatility against the dollar.
I agree. I'm not saying that it's gonna be tomorrow, but once people get used to it and the price is stable, well, I don't remember when I read it. It's supposed to be. I think it was Saylor who said that when it reaches 10 trillion or this parity with gold, it would be stable. And for sure, when that threshold is hit, he's gonna phase out the dollar.
Okay, so maybe next year, 10 trillion.
Yeah, maybe 3 to 5 years. It looks like 1 to 10 years maximum.
Well, I don't think we'll even discover the true price at the 10 trillion market cap, right?
Oh no, not even close. Price talkers.
But I think what we're missing here is like, when people phase out, like even banknotes, like there used to be larger £5 notes in the UK. There was a certain time scale, to transition off it. Just think about like transitioning off the dollar, even as that, like eventually, I don't know what the time scale is, but them doing that, right, is saying, hey, by 2025, sats only, and foreign exchange rate is how you get into dollars and Bitcoin. But the thing is that the Bitcoin is the harder currency, so actually importing stuff will be pretty good, just like the currency wars with USA versus China, right? We debase the dollar and they debase their currency. It's a race to the bottom. Whereas, like with Bitcoin, at least you have this stronger asset.
I think I think they'll phase out the dollar in 12 months. I'll say it right now. because if you guys
Yeah,
have read
someone's
the law,
bullish.
yeah, listen, I'm not only bullish, I am hyper sound money bullish. All right, I'm just adopting that term right now because these freaking idiots. All right, I'm not going to talk about ETH, but the dollar is going to be digital within 12 months. With that will come a very precise laser-like inflation that will not benefit El Salvador, and they will essentially have to survive off of the dollars that they have existing inside their system, which is what a lot of people are saying about the Bitcoin adoption. They're afraid that they're going to run out of dollars because they're if the currency that they're adopting goes down too much, they'll lose dollars, and or if it goes up too much, they'll lose dollars. But they're forgetting that denomination of products and services is going to change the game completely. We were in a spaces 2 days ago with a hotel owner that said, "I don't care about the price because some lady paid me for 3 months of stay here in Bitcoin, and I saw it as a windfall of Bitcoin, not in dollars, because I didn't sell them to dollars." And that's what's going to shift the denomination of Bitcoin or in Bitcoin will eventually accelerate this the drop in the dollar so fast. That's why everyone's freaking out at the IMF, because the sound money effect happens quickly. Okay, it does not transverse, or so I can't talk today, man. It does not mean that they're going to wait until the dollar goes up or down. They're just saying, look at this shit. It's going to go up, down, or it's going to go in inflation too high. Why are we waiting? Let's just adopt Bitcoin and not worry about the dollar inflation, because once we see 10% inflation, all right, a core CPI of 10%, which is already here, but not measured, right? Because they exclude housing and fuel and a bunch of other stuff. What's it going to do to the markets? How are Salvadorians going to be able to pay for raw product in dollars if the dollar is being inflated at that rate?
Dan, I have a question on your statement that they're gonna phase out the dollar within 12 months. Have you considered how difficult that is in a technical way? I mean, just all the systems supporting US dollar transactions.
Yeah,
Why do you
no,
think
no.
that would be possible?
Yeah, I think it's systems wise, it's impossible. There's no doubt. I agree with you. But have you read the law that tells how the digital dollar will work? It's freaking insanity. All right, they're going to use postal locations as banks. Okay, that's the only reason why they didn't let the postal service go bankrupt last year in the U.S. Because they've been bankrupt for 10 years, but they were going to shut it down because they couldn't operate anymore, and they had to insert so much money into it that they were like, "Why are we doing this?" Because they knew that eventually banks were not going to be able to service that many accounts and that many people going into their banks just to cash out, BS digital dollars. They're not going to need to go to a physical bank anymore. Okay, that's over. And the reason this is happening is because they're using the digital dollar as a counter to the loss of control and inflation. They're not using it because they love it and because they love cryptocurrency, but because they have to compete with Bitcoin now, and they can't. All right, they're going to force people to adopt this garbage shitcoin digital dollar. And what's going to happen is banks are going to go away. Okay, no more bank locations. Forget about your Chase Manhattan Bank, downtown Manhattan. Forget about it. Okay, there's no need for that because people can't make deposits physically anymore. There's not going to be checks to do that, right? There's not going to be withdrawals of cash. It's over in the kitchen. There's not going to be withdrawals
So
of cash. So they're gonna dump the entire ecosystem now. All right, it's going to be like boom. I think it was Luke who said that they were just going to blame the banks for the catastrophe that is coming, saying that they over leveraged. Yes, the banks over leveraged, but who the hell gave them the money to do that? It was the
Or
freaking
who,
Fed.
or who created the policies that allowed the fractional reserve banking as well, right? It's always the government policies that tend to cause the problems, and then they point the finger somewhere else, right? I think the transition to hyper Bitcoinization is actually the transition from a Keynesian economic to an Austrian economic philosophy, right? So it doesn't really matter about the currency adoption, right? It's about the economic system that is going to transform El Salvador into a citadel.
I just want to say
so here's where I
that was the
disagree.
most beautiful thing I ever heard in my life, bro. I am so sorry, but I'm sorry to interrupt you, but wow, that was chef's kiss, bro.
That's it, man.
Seriously.
That's it. 5 words. He killed it, right, Dan?
Yeah. That was a chef's kiss. Delicious. That was. Oh my god.
Okay,
So right here's
I
where I
got
disagree a bit with what Dan just shared. A slightly different take. I agree it's going to be stable over a long period of time. Now, the reason why I don't agree with Michael Saylor saying that it'll be stable at 10 trillion is only for one reason. If you look back in terms of when there was serious monetary issues with the currency, I'll use an example that everybody has heard of. If you look at Weimar Republic's currency, during that period, if you look into history, the volatility of the safest asset, which was gold, fluctuated as high as 160% up and down both ways monthly. That is how insane a sound monetary policy, a sound monetary item can be in something that is so dysfunctional. I'm not saying that it's not the right way to go ahead to look at things, but the issue here is far more complex than what we think. Because everybody using dollar, they're going to still price Bitcoin in that particular currency. So while one element is stagnant, it's the supply is not changeable in any sense. The word is decentralized. If you're valuing it based on the base currency that's being used and circulated around, you're going to assume the asset that you're having in hand is the one that's volatile, not the one that you're using to make the purchase initially. Over a period of time, I completely agree. One set is one set, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. Nothing changes that. But the transition to happen within the next 12 or even 5 years, I think is a bit, can be a very, can be quite volatile to be honest. Yes, the upside is huge for everybody, but to say that you're not going to see volatility and the stability at 10 trillion, it's not as clear as that based on history. I was just reading this earlier in the day. Since 1923, there have been 38 currencies that literally has printed themselves into oblivion. 38. I never knew that. I just assumed the handful of currencies I knew was about 15, maybe at the most. There's a website that's not been updated recently. It's called dollardays.org. If you look in that page, I hope it's been updated recently. But if you look into the page, the first link will show you in terms of the inflation and countries that actually have destroyed their own currency due to what the United States is doing at the present moment. It's interesting read.
So that reminds me of something I haven't said in quite a while that combines all three subtopics in the title here: macroeconomics, geopolitics, and game theory. And that is, 38 currencies printed themselves into oblivion. Did you say since 1923? And think about how many will be failing in the next, 5 years because of the money printing that's happened in the last 1 year. And we talk a lot about the dollar, and the dollar, being debased and possibly hyperinflation. But there's a whole bunch of currencies that are going to fail before the dollar ever does. It's the world reserve currency, which gives it a lot more resiliency, and other currencies are being devalued faster than the dollar, which is actually why you're hearing, occasional reports about the dollar getting stronger. It's just relative to those currencies, it's getting stronger, but it's getting weaker, right? But those other currencies are being debased faster. So imagine you start getting a series of countries with a failing currency, and the population starts onboarding to Bitcoin. I actually think if you want to have boots on the ground, we ought to be going to countries that have the highest inflation rates and putting it directly in people's hands, because that will create a cascade effect in that country, that has a 50% inflation rate. And then people in a country that have a 20% inflation rate are going to hear about it. They're going to be, wait a minute. And then we're going to have some boots on the ground over there. and then they're going to go onto Bitcoin. And just as one after another fiat currency falls, Bitcoin can just grow and grow and grow just naturally. So that's something I've been thinking about, for a whole year that might be in our future, not too long.
Yeah, that's
It was
the dollar milkshake theory proposed by Brent Johnson. The US dollar is going to be the last to fall in the dominoes of fiat currencies because, as you said, there's so much US dollar debt out there that all these other emerging markets have to devalue their currency first. And when you saw the COVID crash last year, what I found was really interesting was that all the currencies that were getting significantly devalued against the dollar, they're also the countries with the highest inflation and also the countries that have recently had politicians signal their interest for Bitcoin. That was Brazil, Mexico, the Turkish lira, you had the Argentinian peso. All these South American countries got absolutely decimated last year in the COVID crash, and a lot of them didn't get the US dollar swap lines from the United States. So they're sitting there with a currency that's losing 30 to 40% of its value each year, if not more. And they're just going to throw their arms up in the air and say, look, I'm not getting a US dollar swap line. The US isn't helping me. My currency is going into an oblivion. I may as well just adopt Bitcoin. US dollar milkshake theory for anyone who's interested, but all of these smaller emerging market fiat currencies will fail first. But as soon as they start failing, the dominoes will start to fall, and the US will be the last to fall. But that's where you'll see the hyper Bitcoinization event. Who knows when that happens, but I feel like it's pretty close. Yeah, I don't know.
It's what's happening in Africa right now. Tanzania just went 180 because of they know I mean, Zimbabwe is soon to follow for sure. It's like all those currencies are every day they lose purchasing power, and every day they face revolution from their population because they seriously cannot transact or do anything meaningful with their money.
Just imagine for a second if, Bitcoin plays out like, our greatest hopes and just saves the whole entire world. Imagine what a name Satoshi Nakamoto will have after people's lives improve. How many statues of Satoshi Nakamoto will be put up around the world, even though nobody knows what his face looks like?
Craig, right? No?
He'll win a Nobel Peace Prize for sure.
It's a lot of bullish talk right now, man. I like it. It's Friday. All y'all sound real bullish on Bitcoin. I love it.
Dude, you have no idea, man.
Eating some
we are
sushi right
drilling
now.
down.
I'm here eating some sushi, busting down some food on Friday. Y'all talking real fucking bullish right now, man. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Awesome.
Right.
Okay.
So
Thank you very much.
I'm
Bullish
I'm more
Friday.
cautiously optimistic than most. Sometimes I'll share some fantasies of mine that are more wildly optimistic. But when someone wants to come up here and tell me that I'm not being optimistic enough and they're recklessly optimistic, I don't mind listening to that at all.
I'm not going on that. I'm not jumping on that train, buddy. No way. But Power, I love your enthusiasm, man. I love the way you talk. I wish you'd come up here and speak some more, buddy.
No, we need Log to keep the leash on us bulltards. We can get a little bit ahead of ourselves sometimes, but I can tell you what, something just feels different. All the ingredients are there, baby, for a hyper Bitcoinization event to happen in the next 1 to 5 years. So I don't think this thing goes for another 10 or 15 years of this casual 4-year cycle. To Resh's point earlier, if Bitcoin hits $10 trillion, I think the probability of another 85% drop down with a consequent, 3-year bear market, I think the probabilities of that are pretty low. I think if it gets to $10 trillion, I don't think it's going to lose its volatility, to Resh's earlier point. I think it's going to be very volatile until it approaches its fair value, which is not at $10 trillion, but more like $200 to $300 trillion. That's the fair value of Bitcoin. If you look at all the store of value assets in the world, But I think if it hits the 10, you could see something that Preston Pish talks about, and that's just escape velocity. That's all the central banks FOMOing in trying to buy some Bitcoin. Yeah, I'm bullish, baby. I'm bullish, power.
So the way I look at volatility, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I never would have thought that, say, at the end of 2019, but it's the current events of the world financial system that may make this happen, and not Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin might not have done that so soon, but right now, like the financial system is falling apart, and the people, trying to hold it together with duct tape.
100%.
How many more countries
The
before
future,
end of
the
this
future
year?
of finance is encryption, and that's what the banks are starting to realize. This is just a fact. And your zeros and ones that are on your application, on your screen, on your computer, yeah, I tell people it should scare you that most of your banks do not use two-factor authentication, but most of the Americans don't even understand that concept.
All right, everybody.
So-
Everybody has to click on QE's profile and go look at his banner. That's the most awesome banner I've ever seen. QE, welcome to the panel.
Pac-Man.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. My name is Gerald Vada. I'm actually the Director of Communications for Quantum Economics. I am a crypto analyst and a crypto economist.
Awesome. So, what are you thinking about Bitcoin today?
Oh, I mean, we can see that China's attack on Bitcoin is failing, right? We have emerging markets literally lining up as we speak to take and accept the world's best currency. And I know there's people think it's a store of value. I said, yeah, if you live in the West, it's a store of value. But if you're an emerging market, it is a currency. To be very clear, you guys were just covering all those bases. I mean, go to some of these countries where their currency can't buy crap, right? Or that guy that I saw a video the other day where the guy had to pay his phone bill. He has to take 3 hours out of his day in El Salvador to go pay his phone bill. Now he can scan a QR code, bloop, bloop, lightning, done. So if any people don't understand why people need this stuff, that's because you lived in a nation that's very developed and you probably live a privileged life. Because in these other countries, they don't even have banks, okay? They don't have the infrastructure at all. But guess what? They have a mobile device and they can have a mobile wallet. And guess what? Yesterday, the Bitcoin community grew by 2.5%. And trust me, everyone's going to download that wallet to receive free $30 worth of Bitcoin, or you're just not that bright.
Yeah, you brought up a great point there, saying Bitcoin's both the store of value and a currency. And I think it's amazing how dead set so many people are that you can't that a money can't be both.
Well, it can be both, but what's I think we're learning is that the traditional order might not always apply, right? The traditional order is first it's a collectible, and then it's a store of value, and then it's a medium of exchange, and then it's a unit of account. But right now in countries that are, dependent on remittances, it might become a medium of exchange before it becomes a store of value. And it's an interesting twist.
So the way I look at volatility, another way, if we don't look at market cap, it's going to look at number of wallets or addresses that Bitcoin goes into. The way I'm looking at it is the more distributed the entire Bitcoin holdings are going to be, the less the volatility is going to be there. Just because the people dumping or playing the markets are going to be not concentrated. So the reason I don't like to look at market capitalization with gold is because people keep forgetting if there's an economic crisis, gold will have to revalue itself from a store of value into a monetary asset. And this has happened a number of times, 1933, 1980, 1979 to 1981, it revalued itself again. Each time it did this, the market cap of gold jumped like ridiculous. I think in 1980 was in double digits. It went to close to about $800. There's about 40x, that 20x. Let's just say it's worth 5x from where its current market capitalization is. You're talking immediately is a $50 trillion dollar market cap for gold right there. So then again, Bitcoin will not be at a market cap of gold because you're not comparing like for like at that time. So it's still going to be volatile. So that's why I said the only way to look at it logically, besides market capitalization, is going to be looking at distribution of addresses. I think
no, you're
that's
correct.
where I agree. Sorry, Quantum, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say unique wallet addresses. The more unique wallet addresses, the less volatility. That is 100% correct. But this is, I posted up earlier today, and I've been saying in my private Telegram group for almost 2 years, since about 2018 or 2019, this will be the decade of commodities. And that's not just, wheat, corn. We're talking crypto commodities as well. So we're going to see volatility. I mean, we've already seen it in lumber. We've already seen it in oil hit Brent crude. I think hit 75 the other day. Hasn't done that in a long time. So this will be the decade of commodities, and the volatility is not going anywhere. So when people bring up volatility, I'm like, well, hold on to your horses, because gold, silver, platinum, palladium, wheat, soy, you name it, it's all going to be volatile over the next 10 years. And that's just how it's going to be.
So I'm not sure if inflation, for volatility for currencies to go up, people are talking about inflation. I was listening to Jeff Booth and Greg Foss on a talk that maybe you guys have heard about. It's on YouTube called The Toxic Happy Hour. It's pretty good, to be honest. And Jeff Booth was explaining that the governments around the world, they can't stop printing money because, number one, right now, if deflation kicks in, the entire house of cards that everything's built on will collapse. The issue is not inflation, it's deflation. He gave a very good example, and it's very easy to understand. He said right now, if we look at the price of lumber, we've seen the memes that show us that you're rich without telling that you're rich, and people put a photograph of tomatoes, a photograph of a lumber to show that you're equivalent to a billionaire. If you've seen the price of lumber fall, I think about 40%. Please don't quote me on this figure, but I know the price of lumber has fallen from where it was about 2 weeks ago to where it is now. Now, the danger with that is people have sold their properties based on the projection of the elements building the property to be a certain value. Imagine if lumber falls down, the property that is going to be built falls down as well. Now, whatever has been sold at an extra value will have to be repriced at a lower price potentially. Now, if you think that across the board, what's going to happen there? Because now everything has to be repriced. We have seen banks over leverage to the tilt by giving people access to free money. These will all have to be repriced, and it will cause a collapse in the economic system. Therefore, the central government will have to keep printing no matter what. The idea that we're going to see a healthy wind down, it's a false narrative. That's why I think the issue is deflation, not so much inflation. That's where I'm thinking about right now.
I've been meaning to read Jeff's book and catch up more on his thinking. Does he discuss the potential for governments to declare a debt jubilee as a possible solution?
Yeah, he did, but he is saying that to do it logically, it's not going to be as easy as what everybody's assuming it to be. The only way to do it is to adopt a deflationary asset such as Bitcoin. That's why he keeps saying that Bitcoin is the answer to many of the monetary policy issues. Technology, by definition, is deflationary, and his argument is, as time progresses, we'll have more times on our hand because technology makes things very simple. My issue with that is, if that happens, how people might have a lot of time, but they might not have value in terms of expense to spend their money. That means UBI will have to kick in. If UBI kicks in, how the hell are you going to stop the money printing again? It's a dead end situation there again.
I would have to just chime in real quick. UBI kicks in. What are you talking about? It's been going on for the last year. And
Yeah. You're only talking about the last 12 months. I'm saying that you are assuming this. We do not know if this will continue, right? Assuming it does continue, the question mark becomes then how much more. We as humans, we are never satisfied with $1,200. Next month is going to be 50. Let's say next year is going to be 1,500, then 2,000, 2,400. Where is the line in the sand before it collapses? That's what I was trying to get at. I agree with you. UBI is already here, but to make it sustainable, that means you have to tax a lot of other elements that right now you're not taxing, i.e., robotics. So you're taxing robots at a normal human rate.
Well, yeah, I would say I would agree with you. You have to tax robots in the future, and how about tax Google and GE and all these companies that have been hiding their losses or doing loss harvesting or whatever to get around taxes. That's where you really get the money. Let's be very clear. And I've been saying for years that I don't think you need to I think it's a big mistake for the IRS to just balloon up into this huge super entity just to find you didn't pay $20 off of this Litecoin transaction. Really? You're going to waste taxpayers' dollars for that when you can literally go to Google and say, hey, how about you pay your taxes?
Mike Alfred, welcome to the stage. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, UBI is already here, but how about UBB instead? Why can't we just do universal basic Bitcoin as a universal right to prevent all these people from being replaced by robots? Why can't that work?
What's it called? El Salvador has already shown their hand. That's the first step. $30 Bitcoin airdrop. Fucking love to see that. But that's a great point, Mike. I think that's the most logical conclusion, and the first country to do it will have their citizens benefit the most from the transitionary period that's coming. Great idea.
One of my little fantasy theories that'll never come true, I'm sure. But wouldn't it be cool if 10 years from now, Satoshi reemerges and transfers from his possession 0.1 Bitcoin to the 10 million wallets that hold the smallest amount of Bitcoin?
Yeah, this is like one of those fantasy tweets about Bloomberg giving every American $1 million. Wouldn't it be great if you could just give every American 0.1 Bitcoin? Beautiful.
I realize that's not going to happen. But yeah, UBB, there's a possibility there. And, a lot of people think that, once we're on the Bitcoin standard, the government isn't going to be able to collect taxes. And I just, always remind them, we live in meat space, and government shows up to your door in meat space, and they're going to know more about what you owe in taxes because of a blockchain. They've already shown that they can pretty much figure out who's who on the blockchain, especially with KYC, and they're going to be able to tax Bitcoin. And if for some reason they weren't, they just switch to a system of taxation known as Georgism, and they tax real estate. They're going to collect their taxes.
Yeah, I don't think taxation is an issue. Personally, I think nobody is going to disagree that if you're going to get value for what you're being taxed for, everybody's happy to pay taxation. Like if they say 20% tax flat rate across the board, and you get free healthcare. Okay, not free maybe in America, but in England, it's free healthcare. You're taken care of in terms of the social welfare. People will be happy to pay up their share of what they owe. I think what everybody here disagrees, and I think anybody that is sane would agree as well, that 40% taxation is insanity. I think if we look in terms of the civilization that has ever prospered over hundreds of years, it's when those countries tax the least. People tend to go and spend money there. People tend to build fantastic businesses there. Savers are also going there, but also people want to spend money there because they actually see their money go further. I think that's what Bitcoin will allow, because you can actually save and also spend. It's a brilliant. I think that's a brilliant play. I think America will definitely adopt this at some point. I in some part of me hopes that they don't say that they want to ban Bitcoin or go out against them. I hope they will say something like it's seen as a status of a store of value. I think they are already saying it, but to officially recognize it as gold, it's going to be a game changer across the entire globe because now a superpower is telling you that.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's a total mindfuck and a total paradigm shift, and all of my interactions with like traditional finance folks. Like I had an interesting exchange with Colin Roche today. He has like 58,000 followers. He's a really nice guy. I know him well in person, and he's talking about how Bitcoin can never be money because it's a 100 vol asset. And I'm like, well, what happens, 6 or 8 years from now when billions of people are using Bitcoin and it's not a 100 vol asset? And it's like a mind fuck. He literally can't understand how that would be possible because he's only capable of looking at the chart of how the volatility was for the last 5 years. Same thing in the conversations about this Bukele in El Salvador. It's like all these conversations like, oh, he's a dictator, he's terrible, all this stuff. And it's like, well, we've never had a dictator with Bitcoin before. So we don't actually know, what's going to happen. We don't actually know with bad leadership if that's sort of preempted by Bitcoin because it's never happened before. So I
Yeah,
think
and let's be very clear that crime's been going on for a long time. It's all been precipitated by poor U.S. policy in conjunction with the IMF and the World Bank as well, giving poor loans that made a certain section of the population very wealthy and a majority of the population very poor. And that was done with dollars, not Bitcoin, I tell people.
Yeah, and to both of your points, Q and Mike, you guys make great points. It was done with dollars. It's been going on for basically since the beginning of civilization. And Mike, to pick up on your point, we've never had someone in this position. Maybe he's an authoritarian, we don't know. But the incentive structure is completely flipped, right? With fiat, it's different, and with and I wish you Luke, maybe you can just talk about Ethereum versus Bitcoin one time because I love that definition, like that comparison. But like it's yeah, man, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, the fiat world is the incentives are all messed up, and so now we have this new asset which kind of allows us to like realign and move incentives in a direction which are much more long term and conducive to like human uh, um like improvement of human life versus what fiat does is we just kind of like enslave us and impoverish. So Mike, Q, you guys hit it right on the head, man. We haven't been in this position before,
Okay.
and the reason why we're here is fiat.
Can there be a dictator when Bitcoin allows the separation of money and state?
No,
that's kind of,
by
that's kind of
definition,
my question. That's kind of the thought experiment that I was trying to raise last night in one of these spaces, and it was really hard to have that conversation because we don't know what happens when somebody brings about an open source monetary system that's fundamentally destabilizing to that existing power source, right?
You're
So
going
if
to
a powerful leader
decentralize
brings in,
money, and eventually we will decentralize power structures.
Mike,
That's the beauty of it.
yeah,
yes,
I just want to give you props on that framing of your sentence. We've never had a dictator that's surrendered the power of the monetary policy by the central bank in their country. That's I've been arguing with people like that that have said that Bukele is a dictator, but to my credit, I did recognize that, but I didn't put it in those words, and that was my god, man. I just want to recognize that, and secondly, when you frame it in such a way that people can cut through all the bullshit and say, what is a dictator without the money control? What is a dictator without dictating monetary policy? What is a dictator if they can't take my money by force? Who is this guy?
Well, let me just throw up
Well,
a little cold water on this discussion, and that is a strong man leading a country that is acquiring reserves of Bitcoin. Who's going to hold the keys? He's going to determine who holds the keys. And what have dictators done in the past? They've looted the gold from their countries. So that would be really bad for Bitcoin if an authoritarian leader just confiscated a country's worth of Bitcoin.
Don't you think though? Don't you think though? And Log, I hear you, but don't you think that the fact that we don't have the fiat standard, the fact that it is a Bitcoin standard, and this is like a global phenomenon, that there's enough people in our community that would say, "Dude, what the fuck are you doing? This is not the way." Don't you think? I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hear you.
To that
Definitely.
point, dude,
And the
the
fact that
problem
he's
with
already
the
airdropped Bitcoin is the exact antithesis to that is a good sign, in my opinion.
Yes, yes.
to your point about looting, Log, the issue with looting, like for example, in this country, we don't have the evidence to prove who took what and when they take it and where it is now. All right, they found a suitcase with $150 million in a house somewhere in the middle of a city, like 3 months ago, and nobody would say whose it was, right? But that's money that the U.S. aid people give the politicians. For example, just one example, that was supposed to be quote unquote aid, but it is debt, and the people don't get it because they don't know where it went and they don't know who took it. But with Bitcoin, it's a game changer. You can't just take $150 million worth of Bitcoin and not know where it went. I mean, we're seeing that with all the exchanges going away. They know where the money is.
There's a big assumption, Log, in what you just said relative to how people are holding their keys, right? Whether they use Strike or whether they use a hardware wallet or whether they write down their seed phrase or whatever, right? It's just a lot harder to seize, 100,000 people's money when it's denominated in Bitcoin than it is in a central banking system where you can sort of seize money at will whenever you want.
No, those are all good points.
Yeah, and I'm not saying there wasn't a good thought experiment what you just said. I just feel like a dictator, whether he's a dictator or not, like let's leave that aside, but a strong leader, you take a Simon Bolivar, even you take a Pinochet and you rewrite the history of Latin America with Bitcoin, and I'm willing to bet that some of the things that happened over the last few hundred years just went differently, right? And maybe there's more middle class people, or maybe there's more decentralized power, or maybe there's more non-extractive industries or whatever, right? Like the interesting thought experiment is, if you gave Simon Bolivar Bitcoin, how does Latin America look different today, right? And then that's how you extrapolate, how does Africa look different a century from now, right? How does Asia look different a century from now, right? And that's where I'm really trying to go with it. And I don't think anyone knows the answers, but I'd love to hear smarter people than me opine on that.
Oh, we're literally living in the experiment right now, man. I mean, I'm so excited to see Tanzania is literally the president there is like, yo, Banks, get on this shit. So we're about to witness probably the most amazing parts of history where we're decentralizing capital, right? We're decentralizing money, which is totally awesome. And the powers that be think they can stop this. And guess what? We just watched China try to do it. And could the price go a little lower? Yeah, it might, but it's not phasing me because I can see the exponential growth, right? Like in one day, the Bitcoin community, if everyone downloads that wallet, it will be 2.5% larger, literally in 24 hours. So when people seem to underestimate, like, and I used to hear this argument, like even in 2018 or 2019, it's 10 years away. I was like, you guys don't get this. The infrastructure is already there. We're not building cell towers in Africa. They're there. We're not waiting for people to have mobile phones in these emerging markets. They're there. So they don't realize that everything's about to be leapfrog, just like the telecom industry did in these emerging market countries. We're about to see the same thing happen, in my opinion.
So here's where I'll put a bit of cold water on the discussion. I'm with Log on one aspect, which is we agree that if Bitcoin is used as the monetary policy of the country, yes, it's very hard for dictatorship to occur. However, there's nothing stopping any of the governments to say we'll build our entire CBDC program or our digital currency on the Ethereum network. If they do that, it's same as fiat. We all know the issues with Ethereum protocol itself. Then the power still can be concentrated. The only thing that has changed is the holdings have moved from paper currency to the digital element. That's all that I would say that, and I think that's what many countries are going to do. I think China clearly said that they plan to build their CBDC on ERC20 technology. God, if a country like that is telling they want to do that, you pretty much can understand how fucked up the protocol must be. But that's the view I have. Like, I don't think people are going to jump on a bandwagon of even the most noble of all countries like Bukele. He has the best of intention and he has brought Bitcoin into the country. But the person coming after him might decide, okay, Bitcoin is already here, the wealth is here, but he might go down the route of using Ethereum, for example, or ADA, or whatever the other protocols claim to do, and build the entire infrastructure on that area, or on that protocol, sorry. And then you still look at dictators because you still can control the money printing element of that. So I think while we are all very optimistic, we got to bear in mind power corrupts, absolute power absolutely corrupts, and there's no bigger corruption and power than money, and nobody's going to let that go, to be honest.
Okay, so just muted everyone for a second. We're building up a long list of people who want to speak. So if you're on the panel but you're not really able to contribute much right now, feel free to step down and so I can rotate some people in. But if you are listening and speaking, please stay. So we'll get some other views in here, some other questions. And Crypto Block joined us a little while ago but hasn't spoken. So Crypto Block, what is on your mind? Crypto Block, are you there? I'm going to go ahead and approve some of these other requests.
While we wait for my boy Crypto Block, I've got to bounce. I've got to go train, so I'll be back in a couple of hours, boys. Keep this bullish talk going. I'm loving it. I can feel it tingling in my balls. Let's fucking go. See you guys.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in a little bit in defense of what Log was saying. While it is true that no matter what, basically, if a dictator isn't able to print money, like it's going to be way harder for them to exert their dictatorial powers, because I mean, there's no easier way to steal the wealth of a nation than to just print money. They don't need goon squads. They don't really need to go tax collectors. They don't need to go into meat space and collect you from your homes to enforce their taxes. So it will require more energy for the government to do that. But currently, there are still plenty of ways for them to enforce that. Now, there are in meat space, like Log was saying, to especially with KYC coins to your current Bitcoin address. Now, I know that there are improvements to Bitcoin that it's making that more difficult. For one, Lightning is off-chain transactions. I haven't dove into the tech of Lightning, so I don't know like how long those logs are kept, and if the Lightning network can be like the people running Lightning channels, if they could, someone could show up at their door and, demand the records from their channels or anything like that, and then, backwards, comb through that data in order